I'd like to welcome you to a conversation with Destination Canada, Conference and Meetings World's inaugural destination discussion in a new series. And where better to start than with the second biggest country in the world. We'll be finding out how the past 7 months or so have affected Canada and how its business event leaders have been coping with the situation and what the strategy is for navigating this pandemic. The idea behind this conversation and the ones to follow is simply to get an update on each destination and how they're coping during these testing times and what the future might look for the events industry. I am very pleased to welcome from Destination Canada, Chantal Sterck-Nadeau, the Executive Director of Business Events Canada, and Virginie de Fischer, the Senior Director of Business Development for Economic Sectors. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for joining me.
Merci. Thank you.
My French isn't that good, I'm afraid. Just maybe we can start with you, Chantal. How have the past 7 months been for you and the team and the Canadian meetings industry?
Well, as it's been for most of the people, it's been really, really difficult over the last couple months. And you know, since March, I think it has even had some ups and ebbs and flows throughout over those 7 months. So every time we kind of get a little bit more hope, it kind of comes back down. And we're also looking at how these things are going globally with the pandemic. So, you know, that has been difficult, but I think when you come back to it and you think back, well, what has COVID actually provided for us with this time where we are back in our homes and with our own businesses and travel has stopped and halted? I really think that it has had provided us a very unique opportunity to pause and rethink everything from our direction of our own industry, what our roles are within our industry. And that really holds true across all Canadian businesses that we've actually been talking to, whether the DMOs, the DMCs, the hotels, et cetera. So, and knowing that until now, our mandate has always been to go out and attract business events and incentive business from outside of Canada. But with this time and the rethinking and reviewing everything from our model to what we do, this has also provided us some time to think and look back into Canada. And we've been working a lot with our Canadian partners, not just to attract international now, is really how can we help them? And that has provided, you know, what is that support? That's the true Canadian thing, as we all know. How do we help? How do we lend a hand? But that has really shifted our priorities as an industry, as our partners as well, as they also are spurring their very limited budgets to limited staff resources on how we can actually help them. And I would say for us, that has been our major priority over the last 7 months. But it's also that what we've been doing is an immense amount of conducting research, whether it's focus groups with planners, what we've done with the UK a few weeks back, with the US, of all segments, associations to corporate business. We've been conducting a lot of that research in order to provide our business event communities with the best data, so that once we kind of get out of this, how can we help them in that recovery and making decisions moving forward?
And talking about your partners, you're saying there, maybe Virginie, you can go on. In terms of how is Destination Canada working with your provinces or your territories during this time to ensure that when time permits, they'll be ready to welcome business back?
Thanks, Ian. Just like Chantal mentioned, it's really collaboration. It's how we support each other in this time. And we see ourselves as change makers within the Canadian business event space. There's organizations like Meetings Meets Business Canada or the Travel Industry Association of Canada. They will work to raise that industry profile so that everyone understands kind of what the true impact is of business events at the moment. But our role, what we've been doing, working with our provinces and our destinations, is being the connector and the dot connector between tourism and economic development. So we're helping these various agencies understand what the true role of business events is, and that how it will impact the future recovery and the resiliencies of these communities, and how they can in turn work together with their tourism agencies so that they can help attract those business events. So while, you know, everything has paused right now, we have been working with these partners to develop a whole suite of collaterals where we're focusing on these. And you're very aware of our economic sector strategy, but how those leading economic sectors that we believe will survive the pandemic, but not just survive, they will thrive because of it. So we're developing a comprehensive sales and marketing plan that's centered around the belief that those events within those sectors will be among the first to bounce back and to come back.
And Chantal, are major events currently running? What are the basic regulations for that at the moment?
We know that the global events have all pivoted to online during this pandemic. But there are some smaller events that are taking place across Canada right now using a mix of, what are they calling it now? Everything from in-person, hybrid, blended, whatever the industry comes out of this with the real word, but the hybrid meeting approach. We have seen, them having their own tourism panels, conferences internally across the board. But we now are discovering, some of the Canadian businesses who typically would host their incentive events outside of Canada, for the last couple decades are now rediscovering the wealth of experiences that they can find in Canada. What are those incentive destinations that we've been attracting outside business? So it's that whole concept really on revisiting and keeping what's in that to be able to capture that market share. We've also seen Halifax Convention Centre that recently hosted a regional event for 200 delegates from just what they have, as Virginie was mentioning, their Atlantic bubble. So they can't get outside that bubble. So there's 4 Atlantic provinces, but they're then starting to have those meetings internally and getting face-to-face again, and as well as then also offering that hybrid aspect. And it's also very important to note that our 10 provinces and 3 territories, they're very different gatherings, as Virginie said, that are taking place across Canada. So some province can only go to the east, another province can maybe only go to the west. But what remains the same across the country is the industry's understanding that health and safety comes first. To that end, our partners have really put together comprehensive safe meeting guidelines in place, specific to their regulations, and then been sharing it with us so that when clients are actually now asking, we have that ability to say, okay, you're from here, absolutely, you can go here. So those safety measures will really remain when borders reopen and international events resume back for Canada.
Yes, because on that note, when do you expect international events to restart? And what needs to happen for that, actually?
That would be very interesting to say, but for that end, if I had a crystal ball, I would be able to say. But to put a date in the calendar really would only be speculation on our part and my part, perhaps. But I can tell you that part of our recovery, what do we call it here? It's our 3R program. Respond, Recovery, and Resilience plan. What we've done is we've put together that plan in response to COVID, and we're immersed in research, conducting focus groups with key decision makers and influencers right now, and we're monitoring those restart signals. So what is it that we're looking for in terms of each border opening up, when those decisions are pushed, when our meeting planner is going from rebooking to now starting to do research and getting to that next step within that path to purchase. That's what we're gauging right now, and is very important that our partners are looking at what are those restart signals. And when those signs of recovery remain very uncertain, like now, we have a business events impact report that we produce on a monthly basis back to our industry that tells them how things have been going. So all our Canadian DMOs, 23 of them across the country, and convention centers are all providing us a national data, which no other country really has this much data that's coming to us. And we're then putting into the analysis on what that means back to the country. So that's helping us from an advocacy standpoint, but it's also helping our partners really understand and look at when they can anticipate when some of this business will return. But as Virginie mentioned, it really is looking at the resilient sectors. So we know that life sciences, financial services, and technology are thriving during this time. So they will be the first probably to be recovering because their budgets are high. They need to be getting in contact with those people. They need to be learning and sharing the expertise that they have been learning over the last 9 months. So I think when we get to that point, those are those when we look at a priority on how we're actually making sure that we're sending them the stories, that they're reading our information and keeping Canada top of mind, that we are reaching out to those clients to monitor that speed of when people are ready. But it doesn't mean that we're standing still, because we are continuing to influx to be making sure that we're maintaining contact with them. And I think, when we look at this, industry experts, they expect that the announcement of an effective vaccine or treatment, when that happens, that will spark absolute confidence in traveling for business purposes again. And we know that. But while our research is also showing that booking pace is behind, as we all know, we also are committed to international business development. So we're not stopping the international marketing. We're not stopping to reach out to everybody to keep Canada top of mind for those event organizers.
Yeah, I think that's happening. Absolutely. I mean, Virginie, what are Canada's current restrictions on incoming business travelers?
Well, like Chantal said, it's safety first. So back in March, our Prime Minister announced the travel restrictions that limit travel to Canada. But those restrictions constantly evolve. And so what we always say is it's check the official website, canada.ca, because then you'll find the latest up-to-date information.
Yeah. And what markets are you then looking to target first to bring back international events?
Well, like Chantal mentioned, this is real opportunity to do a reset, pause, and relook at what is happening. So we know, for example, from our focus group research, regional events will be first to return, followed by national and continental long haul, right? So that's a given. But what we've really spent the time looking at over the course of the pandemic is really looking into these global ecosystems within the sectors in which we lead in. And what are those specific trends? Which ones are thriving? Which ones are doing well? And which ones will come back first? So the implications for the future of business events. And those sectors that are pandemic proof, like life sciences or like technology, finance, insurance, and even advanced manufacturing, they're really going to be a priority for us.
And how's the meeting industry trying to keep itself viable? And do you sense a new sense of cooperation and unity of purpose, despite the competitive pressure?
Well, I think as Winston Churchill first said, never let a crisis go to waste. So this has really, I think, our industry operators, not just ourselves, it has, I mean, this has halted so much business across the globe. Small to medium-sized companies like DMCs, this has really impacted, and they're finding their niche of a need to actually change their model, and that's what's happening. And I think that that's a good thing, that they're finding a way to stay in the industry. They believe in and are passionate about the product or the service that they deliver, and they're finding that way to repivot to a new model to be able to provide, so that when business does come back, and I think it's going to come back bigger and stronger in terms of better value, because there has been that time to pause and rethink. We just recently had a Meetings Means Business rally for recovery online, and it was an event online. And one of the presenters challenged the audience with the question, what if you were to build this industry from scratch? What would you do? What would you do the same, and what would you do differently? And that really sparked, of course, great discussion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier, Canadians are resilient. We've heard countless stories of businesses pivoting, as we all know, and we've heard of even some more stories of collaboration, competitors coming together to establish how do we work better together instead of looking at ourselves as competitors. Even for ourselves, we're looking at other countries that sell and market themselves the same way. And we're having connections right now with other countries across the ocean to be saying, how can we help each other? And that, I think, is that other side of making sure that collaboration continues to happen. But it's also looking at what those success stories about, establishing safe meeting guidelines, of course, but the event venues that are transforming their spaces into broadcast studies, and so that organizers now are really becoming, what do they call it, virtual event strategists, because they're really evolving their model and their education and new skills. And I think that's, to me, it's a positive thing. It's a re-spark of innovation. It's those that are reskilling to take, I would say, business events to this whole other level. And that is really, what they're also doing is how they're working within their own communities with caterers that are diverting their resources to help school districts distribute, food to students who can't access their school lunches program. We call all of these stories our glowing heart stories, and they are just that heartfelt examples of how Canadians are coming together. And we all continue to do this in times of need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Virginie, Chantal obviously mentioned it a little earlier, but how do you think the Canadian events industry changed, or going to change as a result of the pandemic? And presumably event tech is developing exponentially. And obviously the hybrid element is going to be something for the future.
Totally. And that's where the true innovation will start coming. That's where, when you ask the question, where will you reinvent yourself? That's where the space is just the unknown, right? It's uncharted territory. And what we've seen is this pandemic's really spurred the digital transformation. It's accelerated, they say, from 3 years to 3 months in terms of technology adoption. And so we're seeing everything from reduction of human to human contact. We're seeing automating process and social distancing, but now these technologies are being adopted by event organizers, and they're thinking ahead. What can we do to automate registration, or how do we eliminate that human contact, or create venues like Chantal mentioned that create those broadcast studios to accommodate the future of those hybrid events. I love to share examples. So, there's a company called Hopin. They're in Montreal, and they're a startup, and they're building a virtual space where anyone can meet up in a really popular real world location and hang out. So it's not just meeting on Zoom, but they're recreating your pub or your bar. And that's through the power of that VR 360-degree video. And now that's more relevant than ever, right? Another one, Automata. It's another Canadian software company, and they have a social distancing tool that will show real-time display. So they'll project onto walls or the floors, the grounds, the actual distance between people. So they're saying, okay, this is the 2-meter mark where you need to stand apart, but they'll make it fun with kind of a projection on the ground or the walls. And talking about our DMO partners, they're also embracing this. So a recent example, we have Meetings and Conventions PEI, so Prince Edward Island. They just hosted a 36-person online FAM where attendees were able to virtually go deep sea fishing. And they were using VR headsets that were provided ahead of time. So they were all sending those VR headsets at home and putting them on, and then going all together experiencing this deep sea fishing. So pretty cool how we're all fitting.
I agree. I mean, I think the virtual element is going to add value to an event, and I think it's going to increase numbers overall. You'll have a lot of people wanting to go to the physical event, but those who can't will go the virtual route, and I think the numbers you'll see increase in general, really. I think finally, so has the experience of dealing with the effects of COVID-19 changed the way Canada sees itself in international meetings market? I know pre-pandemic the country was already promoting itself from the knowledge economy, scientific, technical side of things, but how do you think that's changed?
Well, our business event strategy has always created the platform. We've been, saying this for a while, that it drives economic development within our communities. But the pandemic, really, if you look at it, has really brought this into focus even more. And it's the importance of creating the economic resiliency in our partner communities and the businesses and the institutions within our key priority sectors. So those corporations, those academic institutions that really help drive some of those sector strengths has really brought us back into focus. So, it's interesting. We used to hear all the time about how safe and economically beneficial it was for event organizers to choose Canada. And I'll tell you, we didn't always take that as a compliment, but given the world situation right now, I think it's okay to be known as a safe and economically beneficial place to host events these days. So we can really expand on that by spotlighting, our beautiful landscapes, our people that make Canada part of it, our value system. But it's also our incredible knowledge clusters, which becomes our people, our innovators, and share those stories of Canadian unity and sector leadership to help attract global events to Canada. And to be okay with that. That's really, I think, where now we, it's the perception of Canada, and right now the perception of Canada has actually been increased in terms of a very positive place to do business, to live, and to have meetings and travel to. We see those things in terms of, we've looked at some of those surveys around the world globally when meeting planners are asked, or individual surveys saying, where pandemic ends, where are you thinking that you'll go? Canada's ranking has just risen when we've done studies out into the UK, gone from 5 to 3. We've got the US that has gone from 5 to 2 after themselves. So these areas really show that people are now looking at Canada and for more than just a pretty place, but also a place that is safe. And this is a selling tool now. So we're very happy with that.
No, and I can echo that. He definitely has that kind of perception. Definitely has, and I certainly hope that we've learned enough from this pandemic that should something like this happen again in the future, that we'll be able to cope with it and be able to adjust accordingly, so that we don't have to close down essentially. Unfortunately, not like here in the UK where we're closed to the end of March from the event side of things. So it's there's a long road ahead of us, that's for sure, especially on the international side of things. But hopefully we'll, well, I think we, as you've probably noticed, as an industry, the support between the various sectors within the events market has been second to none. They really do come to the fore, and they do show, even though we may compete in certain areas, that we do support each other quite well. They definitely do.
And I think that the value of tourism overall and the impact that business events have on communities across the world has risen. It's been raised. The awareness of that. People are understanding when there's loss of jobs and, venues are empty. That was an impact that I think maybe sometimes we took for granted in our own communities across the world. And now that the pandemic has really raised awareness to non-tourism partners within our communities to really understand the value and the impact.
So if anybody wants to like to find a little more information about Canada itself and the business events side, they go to businesseventscanada.ca. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you very much. Chantal, Virginie, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for updating us on the developments going on. As I said, there's a long way ahead of us, but hopefully we'll come through this sooner than we think. And I hope that this road leads us to a place where we can meet safely again in person. That would be a very big plus. But thank you. Stay safe. Appreciate your continued support of Conference and Meetings World in particular. And we wish you both all the very best in future successes, and keep well and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Can't wait to see you again, everyone.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.